up over the mountains by us that there was 5 orangey red lights just zipping around and making all kinds of sharp turns and flying around over the mountains. And of course, we're all sitting there staring at this, like, what is this? And all of a sudden, they all made a V shape, like you would see birds flying. They all got into a V shape, and then they swooped down over our street and flew right over us, and then disappeared out into the skyline.
Strange objects, one of them like a spinning top moving against the wind, appeared almost daily from the summer of 2014 to March 2015 high in the skies over the East Coast. Navy pilots reported to their superiors that the objects had no visible engine or infrared exhaust plumes, but they could reach 30,000 feet and hypersonic speeds. Tonight we talk about disclosure. These objects have gotten the attention of the Navy, and the Navy is calling them unexplained aerial phenomena or unidentified flying objects. What does the government know, and when will they tell us? That and more coming up on My Alien Life.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
My Alien Life is recorded live from atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is available on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you will find my email address, all previously recorded shows, and more. I am Cameron Brower. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Tonight in the studio, I have the boys of YouTube's Black Lotus Productions. Black Lotus Productions on YouTube focuses on conspiracy theories, the paranormal, UFOs, of course, aliens, and all things strange and unusual. You can also find Damian and Ralph on Facebook. You can search their names, follow them from my page, and also find them in the Black Lotus discussion group on Facebook. Welcome, Damian Gray, Ralph Torlucci. How are you guys? How's Vegas tonight?
Vegas is warming up. We're supposed to be at 95 tomorrow, I guess.
Nice.
Thanks for having us on.
You bet. Thanks for having me in your home tonight. And I've been trying to get the three of us together for a couple of weeks, and I know when you guys do podcasts or videos, how do technical difficulties fit in with your paranormal format?
We've had some issues, but not really so much lately. We use that OBS to record, and the OBS is doing something weird right now with an echo, and it lasts for about maybe 20-30 seconds, and it's frustrating because I don't know what's going on. But I'm fighting demons in this system all the time, and I'm gonna have to make some changes because I don't have enough time in life to actually mess with all the new software and everything that I'm trying to download and trying to interface with my current system. It just doesn't work. So you guys didn't know this, but we tried to do this last week, and right when we got started, I had a transformer blow up on the pole near my house, and so I lost electricity for a little while, and actually before we even tried to start a podcast, I was driving home and got pulled over by the police, and that took about 10 minutes, and I was running behind, and I was like, man, sometimes it just doesn't seem like this is gonna happen, but I'm glad to see you guys and hear you guys, and glad we got together. But so I kind of wanted to talk about just about anything that we
we could feel that we can fill an hour with tonight. But one of the things that have been happening, of course, in the news, we were talking about this earlier, last week and this week, we had some articles in the New York Post, the New York Times. There was articles all over Facebook, Rolling Stone, Fox News, CNN, about the U.S. government acknowledging that, not that there's aliens, but that, you know, they've been seeing UFOs, and maybe it's time that we learn how to deal with it. What did you guys pick up on that?
Well, I noticed that if they're not actually saying aliens like you said, but they're allowing it to say unidentified aircraft. So, you know, at least they're allowing the people to actually report them now without feeling like these people are crackpots.
You know, and I think that, you know, for the longest time, the government denied any kind of program that was going on. And then when that one video came out not too long ago, the Department of Defense finally said, yes, we do have something going on. But it makes sense that they would have something like that happening, because, I mean, whether these crafts are extraterrestrial or not, if something's in our skies, we need to know about it. I mean, and it's certainly a military concern.
Yeah, and I was kind of troubleshooting this in my mind, and what does it actually mean, and what does it mean for our armed services? But, you know, I mean, what else could it be? I mean, it's like I don't think they would want to admit that possibly that there's craft from another nation, you know, flying in our airspace, which I'm sure it's not that, but you know, it's, and they don't want us to think that, I'm sure, but I think that you know, the what they did release, they released a couple of videos, and you know, you can't tell too much from those videos. I mean, they're amazing nonetheless, but I look at those things and just wonder, you know, you look at the one flying at an incredible speed across the ocean. I don't know if you saw that one, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm glad that they're actually talking about it now and showing us that it's not us. Because that's one of the things they always say, is try to use it as an excuse that it's one of ours that's flying there.
That it's a test vehicle.
Right, there's a test of the new systems and the new type of aircraft they have and stuff. But here they're actually admitting that, no, it's not us. So that says a lot.
Did you hear the one pilot? He described one of them that he almost came in contact with as a sphere with a cube inside. Which,
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah. He said he was close enough to see that it actually looked like a clear sphere with a cube inside. I mean, that's mind blowing right there. I mean, what is that? You know. You know, it wasn't like he saw a saucer with a dome on it, you know, or, you know, It was just, that's the oddest thing. And I guess, you know, last night when I was looking at videos of this last night, and of course it showed, I think it was from 2004, in Manhattan, New York, some UFOs that were there, which is actually close to, you know, where the Navy saw these in 2014 and 2015. But, you know, people in Manhattan were looking at these 7 objects up in the sky, and in downtown Manhattan, and they were in formation and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and they were up there. You know, the video I saw lasted for like 20 minutes, and Wow. Nobody knows, you know, had any clue still to what that is. But yeah, so one of the videos was, it looked like a spinning top, and it actually turned and made turns. And
I think that's the one I saw.
Yeah, and they were talking about, the Navy said that you know, they were reaching 30,000 feet and hypersonic speeds. You know, 30,000 feet really doesn't mean a whole lot to me, because, you know, our aircraft can only go 30,000 feet or a little more, but you know, for short periods of time. But, you know, what does that mean for, you know, these things? You know, did they come from above or did they come from below? I don't know. Right. It's crazy.
Right. Well, you were talking about the one with the clear with the cube in it, and as you know, we're near Area 51 here, and we actually had an experience a couple of months ago where we saw actually it was Damian and his wife Terry, and we were outside and we saw a cigar-shaped UFO that had an orb circling around it. It wasn't attached to it; it was circling around it as it flew past. Very interesting. We watched that for quite a while.
Yeah, yeah, it went past right over our heads, and yeah, finally lost sight of it. It just kind of disappeared into the distance. But yeah,
Was there any color to it? What did
yeah,
describe what that looked like?
yeah, it was kind of silvery, and it seemed to be not necessarily reflecting from the sun. This was during the daylight when we saw this. It wasn't necessarily. It may have been reflecting from the sun, but I don't know. But it almost seemed like it was emanating its own light. But the orb that Ralph was talking about was black, and it would just this ball was going around the circumference of it. And
Yeah, picture a cigar with a cigar band, and where the cigar band was where, so it was like towards one end of it, and it was just circling around it.
yeah, yeah.
I've never seen anything like that before.
And then I saw something. Not when did I see this? That thing dart out of the cloud. That was last week.
Yeah,
right?
like
just
last week.
there. I was out in my patio and I was looking out to the different distance, and I was watching this big eagle or a hawk or something, great big thing. And I was watching it, and it was flying, and there was a cloud in the background, and all of a sudden I saw this black ball dart out of that cloud, and then it went straight to the right. It stopped for a moment, and then it went downward to the left, stopped for a moment again, and then darted right back up into the cloud. And I waited out there to see if I would see it again, and it never did reappear. I have no idea what that was.
Huh.
And again, I'm not going to be quick to say it was alien life. You know, you spend any amount of time out here in Nevada, and especially around where we live, and pretty much all you got to do is look up, and you're going to see something that's unidentified. You know, I mean, in the 5 years that I've lived here, I swear I've seen probably 7 or 8 weird things in the sky. You know, yeah.
You know, in Montana, of course, you don't see that much in the sky. So when you do see something, it was very unusual. For example, today I was at work and I could hear a jet flying over and a small jet. You know, so I thought, well, maybe it was a fighter of some type. And you don't hear that very often. So I ran outside, and, you know, I live at this north end of this huge lake, and this little jet was circling, and it just kept circling and circling over this little town where I am. And I saw it had a split wing on the back, so which was unusual, which I've never seen before. And I don't know too much about jets. So I ran inside and looked it up, and yeah, it's called I think a Cirrus 140 jet aircraft, and it has a small jet engine on the back, kind of on top of the plane, and so it basically takes air from the top of the plane, and its exhaust is between the wings, the V wings, and you know, it's just really amazing to see that here, but which I haven't seen anything like that. And as it took off, you know, just a tremendous burst of speed, and after circling and you know, looking at that thing and seeing how unusual it was and how it was leaving, you know, it's easy to see something in the sky like that and mistake it for something else, but it's those things that you see that are kind of just floating out there for a long time, which are very unusual. And for example, this guy Ryan Graves, who's an FA-18 Super Hornet pilot, and he was in the Navy for 10 years, and he was one of the gentlemen who reported a UFO sighting, and he was saying, this is quoting him, saying, keeping an aircraft in the air requires a significant amount of energy. With the speeds we observed, 12 hours, you know, they're saying what they observed of these aircraft off our East Coast, they saw them up there for at least 12 hours at incredible speeds and doing incredible maneuvers, and he's saying that that's 11 hours longer than you would expect.
Right,
because, I mean,
right.
Because, you know, what we're up there burning fuel like, it's basically just dumping fuel, you know, through an engine.
Well, and the thing is, I think, you know, I mean, again, let's say that these vehicles are not extraterrestrial, and they're man-made. I wonder if they've devised a propulsion system, kind of like Bob Lazar talks about, where they're not using real fuel, that they're using some sort of magnetic energy. And I think that that's entirely feasible. But getting back to, we were talking about the Navy and the pilots reporting these UFOs. I read that one of the reasons that they've made the rules about reporting UFOs a little more lax on these pilots is because of the fact that pilots are having to report these things because they're on many maneuvers, they're having to dodge these things for fear of running into them on a daily basis.
That's crazy. I mean,
isn't it crazy?
It's totally amazing to me. And, I guess one of the Super Hornet, the one that had the near collision, and he said some of those incidents were videotaped. Of course, we haven't seen those yet. I doubt if we'll ever see that. But early in 2015, there was one near collision that they have on tape. So, of course, the Defense Department saying, they're not saying that what you are seeing is extraterrestrial, and they emphasize that there could be some earthly explanation. But I had posted a picture on my Facebook page, and it's a runway with buildings, and it is west of Area 51, and it's also west. It's the next lake to the west from Papoose Lake. And, of course, Bob Lazar, when he said he was working at S4, he said that was near Papoose Lake. But this one is a little south, and it's probably about 5 miles west of that.
Well, it's Groom Lake, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, Groom Lake's Area 51. Then
okay.
You have Papoose to the west, and I'm not sure what the one to the left is. To the left, it's called Sugar something. There's a town there, and so there's a runway there, and there's an airplane hangar or a hangar. The runway is black, like it's brand new, and the front of the hangar that faces the runway is actually round. So it looks like you drive some sort of round object in there. Now, I don't know why you would have to have a round round hangar for a round object, but is it inferring, was it built that way so you could see it from the skies, and it says, this is a round, there's something round in this building. But there is one article that I found on that place, and there's a gentleman who wrote this article, and I don't have it in front of me, but the premise of it is that this is a drone testing facility and a manufacturing facility where they're making experimental drones. So, if you took technology that Bob Lazar talks about and you put it in a drone, I mean, why not? I mean, why couldn't they be out there, testing these over the ocean on the East Coast? It could be.
Well, I totally believe that they're 10, 20 years ahead of what we actually know about.
I hope so.
Yeah, I believe that too. I heard somebody say once that the technology that's in the Nevada skies right now is about 20 years ahead of where we think we are, so.
I would hope that, we do have some technology and we're kind of the leader in that, because things are great now, but in the future, who knows what we have to worry about. Definitely would not want to worry about some sort of alien invasion or something like that we have to deal with, or in addition to already our fighters and other planes off the west coast of Alaska near the Bering Sea, and from Russia, and who knows what they're doing. But I think that some of these guys are saying in the Navy that like this guy, his name is Danny O'Coin, and he's going to be on that new History Channel program I think it's on right now, and I think it's called Unidentified Inside America's UFO Investigation, and I think it starts tomorrow night. And I don't know much about it, but I know that they're gonna talk about what we're talking about, and this Lieutenant Graves and a coin, along with former American intelligence officers. I guess it's a 6-part History Channel series, and it is tomorrow. And they talk about pilots began noticing objects in the 1980s era radar, and once it was upgraded to a more advanced system, they were absolutely picking up something that they could not identify. And as a jet fighter, one after another, got new radar, they all began picking up these objects, and but ignoring them because they thought they were false radar tracks. I mean, it was something that they hadn't seen before, so they were just kind of shrugging it off, thinking that it was
that, and I also think that, you know, by reporting it, they were risking their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. There was one Navy pilot who actually said that he was going to report it. So, and I don't know the mechanism of how this works, but he actually had gone into this room where they kept files on radar, and to file this report, and he was going to attach the report to the recording of his flight, and he couldn't find the recording of his flight. It just wasn't available, you know, as soon as he got there. So
Right.
Which, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that one of the reasons that they're lightening up on the reporting by the pilots is because I believe that probably within the next 10, 15 years, we're finally going to have full disclosure. I really do. And I think the government's finally going to come out and tell us exactly what they know about UFOs. And they may even reveal UFOs that they've backward engineered from crashes, you know, like the crash in Roswell.
Right. One of the pilots also reported that he had actually locked on, and he thought he was locked on to a drone, and he was actually it was a pretty decent size object, and it was above him about 1,000 feet, and he couldn't make any visual contact. I mean, he knew exactly where it was by where it was looking on the radar of his plane, but he couldn't see it. I mean, so it was invisible. I don't know.
Could have been
cloaked somehow.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. But I think that they also saw others. They were flying in formation, 10 feet apart. But then again, I mean, there's some reports, you know, from back in the 50s and 60s, naval aircraft in the ocean, or not naval aircraft, but naval ships in the ocean were also spotting visually UFOs back then, you know, before they had the ability to track them. So it's pretty amazing, and I'm just really, really, I don't know if I'm excited to know or anxious to know. It's just a really weird feeling to hear this.
Well, I don't know if I am anxious to know the facts. On the other hand, I wonder what's going to occur once we do get that kind of disclosure. And the reason I say this, I was talking to Ralph about this earlier today, is that when you've had an encounter with an alien or a UFO, it changes your perspective on life. You know, it changes your entire philosophy about the universe. And yeah, I think that the reason that the media and the government suppresses this information and ridicules anybody who does see something like that is because they don't want us paying attention to this kind of stuff, for fear that we would maybe even rebel against the government, because we're just going to be like, you know, our eyes are open now. We see what you're doing. And so there is a conspiracy theory for you. I don't know, but I really think that may be the case.
Yeah, I'm not anxious to know. I think I already know. I'm just anxious for the confirmation of it.
Yeah, right.
And I'm sure there's some fear there because, you know, nobody knows what people are going to do. I mean, definitely it's going to be a game changer. As for myself, even though relating my own experiences, yes, I've had experiences, and yes, they were unbelievable and unusual, but I think over the years, I try to justify that maybe somehow it was my mind playing tricks on me, even though I was in, definite positions where, like out in the open away from home and, with other people when things happened. So, I still don't know if I believe my own situation 100%. There's always that little grain of doubt, and it's only because it's just so unusual and so unbelievably unique. It's and I hear other people's accounts. I mean, you guys know. I mean, you hear things that are so amazing and so different than. I mean, you could hear people talk about abductees who meet multiple species and different types of beings.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I was like you for many, many years where I doubted myself. I thought maybe I was just, delusional or that I dreamt the whole thing. But no, I've come to the solid conclusion after talking to other abductees that, what happened to me definitely happened. I'm positive of it.
Yeah, and stuff that's happened with me, I haven't been the only one there on some of them. So when you have 20 other people seeing the same thing as you just saw, it kind of confirms what you're seeing.
Tell him about that mass sighting that you experienced.
This is back in 1976. We had just moved into a new community, and it was our first 4th of July there, so the whole neighborhood decided to have a 4th of July block party. We lived in a cul-de-sac, so they were able to block it off, and we were all there, and we had just finished eating dinner and, finished our festivities for the day. And there was, like I said, about 20, 25 people out there. And we were cleaning up, and all of a sudden we noticed up over the mountains by us that there was 5 orangey red lights just zipping around and making all kinds of sharp turns and flying around over the mountains. And of course, we're all sitting there staring at this, like, what is this? And all of a sudden, they all made a V shape, like you would see birds flying. They all got into a V shape, and then they swooped down over our street and flew right over us and then disappeared out into the skyline. But there were, like I said, there was 20, 25 people out there watching this. So, we know we saw something. What it was, we don't know. But
did anybody get footage of it?
Of course not.
and you have to remember this is back in 1976.
Yeah, this was in 76.
So it's not as though any people did kept recording equipment around with them.
We didn't even have cell phones at that point, basically.
Yeah. It's funny. Today I was telling you I saw that jet, and I heard the reason why it interested me so much was because I heard it scream over the building, and it didn't sound like a jet. It just sounded like some big aircraft was flying right on top of the building. So I started to run out. I had my phone laying there plugged in, and I thought, I'll just leave it there plugged in. It's probably nothing, and I just left it because, and it's kind of, I think how people think, it's just, well, this won't materialize into anything, so why even pay much attention to it? But
you were talking about getting footage of it, going back to the day that the three of us here at the house saw the cylinder-shaped, cigar-shaped ship with the orb riding around it. We tried to get pictures of it. I tried my camera phone. Everybody tried their camera phones. You tried a video camera.
Well, I actually came back in the house and grabbed my video camera and put it out there, and I could not get it in frame, and I couldn't find it in the frame. I could see it with my naked eye, but I couldn't see it through the frame.
Yeah, I think with automatic focusing and everything that's automatic on our phone settings, it makes it really difficult too, because I've tried to take things, like birds at a distance, and I live by a lake, and so I don't know, this winter sometime there was an eagle, and he was probably about 50 yards out on the lake eating a fish that he had caught in open water, and he was standing on the ice, and I mean, my phone wouldn't let me do anything. Now, I know that there's adjustments on these phones, and with my iPhone, I'm usually using it on whatever automatic mode it is, but I couldn't do anything. I mean, the contrast of all this white snow and then this dark eagle there, you couldn't make out any detail. You couldn't really do much of anything. So You know, I still wonder why we don't have, you know, some incredible footage. We actually do, I think. I think the New York 2004 Manhattan, that footage is excellent. It just can't get a close up of what these objects are, and
Right.
some people say they were balloons, but 5 balloons don't line up and look like one big ball and all of a sudden split off of each other and, you know, fly half a mile apart and then come back together again
Right.
over and over and doing crazy things like that. So,
And there are a lot of hoaxes out there, most definitely, but that's not
absolutely.
just that's you know, I mean, just because there are hoaxes out there doesn't mean they're all hoaxes.
And especially with drones now, I mean, all these drones come equipped with lights
Right.
and I mean, they look pretty amazing. 4th of July, I think it was 2016. I was at the White House, outside the White House, watching fireworks, and I saw these giant drones. Well, when I say giant, I think they're probably about 3 feet in diameter. 3 of them take off the top of the White House, and they just disappeared. They just took off and were gone. But I mean, they looked like something not of this earth, you know, once they got a couple hundred yards up in the air. I mean, it was pretty amazing to see how that changes your perspective for sure. So you guys we were talking a little bit about technology and Bob Lazar a little bit, and of course we were referring to element 15 and the how he doesn't theorize, but from information that he's gathered, how element 15 is powers the mechanism of anti-gravity in vehicles, and what one he calls the sport model, which is in S4, which is supposed to be underground near Papoose Lake. We all saw the movie, right? Bob Lazar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a good movie. You guys want to talk about that?
Sure.
Go ahead. Tell me what you thought.
Well, I don't think the guy is a crackpot. I think he is who he says he is, regardless of the fact that the government has made his past disappear, essentially. I do believe he worked at S4. I do believe he worked on flying saucers. He stated in there that there were, I think, 9 of them that they were working with.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know. I think the guy's legit. I completely believe him. One of the things that I found fascinating, you know, you're talking about the propulsion system, is that he mentioned that the flying saucers are only perpendicular to the ground when they're hovering. But when they actually move, you know, and you can't see it really because they move so fast, but when they move, they're actually moving belly first. And I thought that was interesting because I'd never heard of that theory before.
So that kind of fits in with that one of those radar videos that came with from the U.S. Navy. I mean, it did show a vehicle or whatever it was that was captured on radar, and it was rotating, it was moving,
Right.
you know, which that's the first thing I thought of when I actually saw that on TV was that, wow, I mean, and that thing is rotating and moving. Is it doing that to fold space-time? Is that what he was saying it did?
Why possibly?
Yeah. I mean, is that what Lazar said? It actually folded
Something
space
like that.
and then and literally like fell into that void, you know. And
I'll be honest with you. I enjoyed the documentary. I really did, but a lot of what he was getting into was way over my head, honestly. so I was kind of like zoned out a few times when he was talking about this stuff.
What I thought was fascinating is that a lot of the stuff he talked about, like the hand scanners, and he mentioned certain security guards, and all that stuff ended up being verified of that a normal person wouldn't know unless they were in that situation.
Right. Yeah. I think that one of the things that really struck me was that there's the story. Now I'm basing a lot of my information, what I'm thinking, on a couple of Art Bell shows where he was on Art Bell. One of the Art Bell shows, and I don't know who was with him, and I don't think it was George Knapp, but it was somebody that knew a lot about physics. So Lazar kept referring to different scenarios and situations that had happened at S4 to this gentleman, and the gentleman would from time to time correct him, like, well, this actually happened, or how it worked was. And I never did find out who that guy was. And of course, that old Art Bell episode, they pulled commercials out of it. The introduction's not there. So it was kind of interesting to know. But, Bob Lazar is a smart guy. If you saw him, he was building rocket bikes, jet bikes. He builds. He also has, his business where he sells
fireworks.
He sells chemicals for fireworks. He sells radioactive material. He sells T-shirts and cups and all kinds of stuff related. He's even trying to get element 15, which is moscovium. He wants it to be called Lazarium. So, so that's pretty funny. I didn't really, I think I liked Jeremy Corbell's style, and I liked the filming, and I liked how the whole thing looked. I think I could have done without Mickey Rourke, even though I think Mickey Rourke is cool. It just didn't fit in where all of a sudden he starts talking, and you're like, what?
That's like suddenly Billy Bob Thornton's in there.
Right. I was like, what? And I knew that Mickey Rourke was going to be on there, but I didn't know he was going to sound like Mickey Rourke,
Yeah. I saw an update with George Knapp just recently, because George Knapp is still working on 8 News Now here in Las Vegas. And he was the one who initially broke the story.
Right.
With Bob Lazar. And anyway, they just recently had an update, and they didn't really say much more than what you could get from, you can glean from a movie. But Lazar was saying that he's still in desperate fear of his life, and his home is getting raided constantly, even still today. And it's like they're keeping him under wraps. They're keeping their thumb on him to make sure that he doesn't say anything more or, reveal anything that they don't want him to.
That when they first broke the story, when Knapp first broke the story, Lazar was used a pseudonym, and he was Dennis.
Yeah, right.
And it wasn't nearly as exciting, when Dennis was talking. He kind of sounded, here's this little. I mean, he was young at that time. I mean, what is that, like 1980 something?
Yeah.
And he was just this little skinny guy, and he still is. But he fit the part, though. I mean, honestly, if you're going to pick a guy on this planet to work at S4 Area 51 and work on flying saucers, I mean, Bob Lazar to me looks like he's a great prospect. So
yeah. I kind of wonder. I have no doubt that the guy's legit, and I have no doubt that he worked on these UFOs. And I kind of wonder how he reacted the first time he was introduced to one of these vehicles. And I'm kind of betting Bob Lazar, being who Bob Lazar is, I'm wondering if he wasn't surprised in the least.
I mean, he kind of, when he was talking about it, he said they were walking through this building, and he kind of reached out to touch it. Of course, they didn't want him to do that, but
right.
He seemed kind of indifferent when he told that story, which I don't know how many times you could tell that story and not get excited about it, because that's just crazy, man. That's something so incredibly different.
Yeah.
Well, I thought one of the interesting things he talked about was how, some of this information got out, but they weren't concerned about it because basically the secrets are easy to keep, because if you tell people about it, they don't believe you anyway.
Right. And they've tried to discredit him so many times, So, yeah. But see, I think that's part of it. I think that's part of that conspiracy thing I was telling you about.
Right.
They're trying to make people look like crackpots when they're not.
Believe what he's saying.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all part of that cover up.
How do they make your background disappear, though? That's like,
I don't know. I've heard there are people in the CIA as well as the FBI their whole job is to erase people.
Men in Black.
Well, not so much that. But I'm talking about just erasing your credibility, erasing your background, I mean, Bob Lazar isn't the only one I've heard of that has had this happen to them. During the during the Cold War, there were a lot of people that were spies, and their backgrounds were eliminated.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah, Stanton Friedman, he looked into it, and he verified that Lazar took electronics courses in the late 70s at Pierce Junior College in Los Angeles, and at the same time, that's when Lazar contends that he was in MIT in Massachusetts. So Friedman also said that Lazar graduated from high school in the bottom third of his class, and that the only science classes that he took was chemistry, and he believes that, you know, that would make it almost impossible for Lazar to attend MIT, as they only take, you know, the top percentiles. So,
Right.
and you know, top percentiles of students that have taken, you know, science and chemistry and basically any science that you could take at a larger high school. And then Friedman also said that that he thinks that he lied about MIT, he lied about Caltech, and he also checked, and no professors remembered Lazar from any of the yearbooks, and there were no records of him attending, and he couldn't remember the year he obtained his master's, and he wasn't a member of any of the professional bodies there, and MIT told Friedman that there was no way to expunge someone from their records. But like you said, the CIA could make that information disappear. They could make you disappear.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of holes in the desert.
A lot of holes in the desert, especially where you guys live.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're... Yeah, so he had an interesting life, and you know, in the 90s, he was arrested for abetting a prostitution ring, and for felony pandering. So sounds like maybe they were trying to harass him a little bit.
Yeah, but he also mentioned in the movie, you know, because apparently George Knapp had a conversation with him about it, and he's like, you know, why did you do this? He's like, look, I had to make money somehow,
right?
You know, so I can't totally blame him for that, but it was probably a stupid move on his part.
Well, and he was doing computer work, so it sounded like most of that was computer work. So, you know, I don't think that's unusual, especially.
Well, wasn't he also installing surveillance cameras in the brothels, and that's why he's been banned from the brothels?
Yeah, I know that he did a little bit of that too. So I didn't really get all of what he was doing there, but it's really interesting that you know, and then he set up his wife with she had some kind of photo processing shop or whatever. So, you know, it's not like they had a lot of money, and they were always being creative and, you know, trying to. Well,
and
money.
After all this whole thing broke, and he came out about all this stuff out of the shadows. You know, I mean, he was no longer accepted in the scientific community, if he was at all. I think he was, but at one time. But you know, after he left S4 and broke all this, he had no place to go. I mean, so you were mentioning that he sells, you know, little memorabilia, coffee cups, and God knows what else.
Right.
That's not surprising at all. He's just trying to make a buck.
Right. And, you know, he does have a lab, so he does, you know, work with chemicals, and I think he got arrested too for building, actually it was for mailing, prohibited chemicals. And that had to do with, the chemicals that he was mailing to build, rocket engines and fireworks. So,
okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. Element 115, which did you get the part where how they were actually taking and forming that triangle of element 115 so it fit in the machine?
I really did. Ralph, did you understand that?
I understood it a little bit. They were getting into too technical of things of chemistry.
It just really kind of went way over my head, actually. I'm not a scientist, you know.
So what they did, they had, you know, they had this machine, and basically it somehow amplified gravity, and it had gravity amplifiers in it. But in the center of the machine was a small, I guess the main producer, and or whatever it did with this element 15. It was just a small component right in the dead center of the vehicle. So they actually, I think they took some of this element 115 down to Los Alamos, and that's where I think Lazar said they took it, and then they had to have it milled. So they took the and I think they had up to like 500 pounds or something, maybe 700 pounds of this stuff, and they would take the product and they would form it into a cylinder, and then out of this cylinder they would mill this triangle that when you looked at it, the edges of the triangle were rounded, so it came to a point. So that's what they needed to fit inside this piece of machinery that amplified gravity. But and he
So has it ever been? I'm sorry. Has it ever been discerned? Is this elemental 115? Is it extraterrestrial in origin or not? Did we create it or not?
Well, the premise there would be that it's extraterrestrial in origin because it occurs probably in nature in some star systems that have tremendous pressure. I mean, tremendous pressure. It's extremely radioactive. It does have a most stable isotope. It has an isotope which is Moscovium 290, and its half-life is only 0.65 seconds.
Oh, wow.
So basically, its most stable element wouldn't be around long. Or most stable isotope, rather.
Well, and I guess that leads to my next question here. If that's the case, if it degrades quickly, let's say they have 500 pounds of this stuff, can it be easily replicated?
No, not here.
Yes.
Not here.
See,
so.
and that's just it. I wonder how long we will have that 500 pounds around if they're doing tests on these things.
Well, and he actually, Lazar said that they had asked. You remember when they asked if he had any, if he
well, yeah, and
off
that's
with
one of the
any.
reasons he's being raided.
And he didn't say no.
Yeah, he didn't say no. He just said, "I don't want to talk about it."
Yeah, I mean,
he avoided a few questions.
Yeah,
I would have said no way, man. But it'd be he did say something about alluding to the fact that maybe he would have taken it back to test it in his lab, which just the fact that he would have some sort of testing equipment in there for element 115 Moscovium, which super radioactive. Can everybody in America have that testing equipment? I mean, it seems unusual that somebody would have that.
Yeah,
whatever that would be.
As smart as this guy seems, to be quite honest, he really lets the cat out of the bag at the wrong times, I think. And that's one of the times I think, like you said, I think I would have just said, nope, I don't have it.
Right.
I mean, rather than alluding to the idea that maybe I did, and then he wonders why he's under investigation all the time.
And he's super awkward, so it's not like, he does blurt out. He doesn't usually blurt out things, but when he does say something, it's usually kind of at the wrong time. And, and he's kind of hard to understand. I was going to say some more about, Moscovium. The interesting part about it, and this is a segue to something, my theory is what's going on there with Bob Lazar, but Moscovium, was synthesized in Russia in 2003, and it said it was synthesized by a joint team of Russian and American scientists for a confab called the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research. But it was recognized as one of 4 new elements, and so that was during in 2003, but they didn't recognize it until like 2015. And when they literally made it, so this I'm pretty sure I'm right, but what they do is they in a collider they take americium. Where you get that, I don't know, and then fire it at calcium. I think it's calcium. And so the signature that it gives off, so they're looking for this specific signature. They can't tell if they have the element, but they know what the signature looks like for the radiation it gives off. So that's how they test it for the byproduct when it degrades, instantly. Even you couldn't even. I mean, it only exists 5 decimal places to the right, of some number. So,
Uh-huh.
but it's not it has properties similar to nitrogen, phosphorus, arsenic, antimony, and bismuth, and it's a post-transition metal. So when you look at it on the periodical table of elements, it's kind of down down below on its own, and
Right.
with some of these others. But so let me just throw this at you, so here's Bob Lazar with no credentials, and he's a nobody. I mean, it's like he was literally jerked out of high school almost, and put on a fast track to be a physicist. And
Right.
So what does that mean to me? They started working on these experimental elements and particle colliders, a long time ago in the 70s, and I think, I know that at that time, just like we had the space race, we also had a race to compete with Russia or at the Soviet Union rather at the time, to produce these rare elements, which whether they had a practical value at the time, who knows? But some of the questions that I had were, what would be the cheapest way? We could say that the U.S. What a unique thing that the U.S. can say. We have element 15. We can produce anti-gravity with not anti-gravity, but we can fold time with it. We can produce I think it was a gravity wave magnifier out with this element 15. Well, of something that that Russia, as it was actually produced in Russia. So you can look at several possible solution to the question, whether did Bob Lazar work at S4? Let's say that he did work at S4. And so what does that mean? Well, he could have worked at S4, and they could have had flying saucers, and they could have element 115. Then again, how valuable would it be to the United States if we wanted Russia to think that we had element 115? Right. Because it's the implications of that are huge, because it's a weapon of mass destruction as well, I'm sure, somehow. So, could Bob Lazar, could they have trained him to say that he did all this in a Cold War tactic? Or did they produce this whole laboratory? Did they produce these flying machines? Did they produce, this element 115 to show Bob Lazar so he could tell the world? I don't know. There's three things there that I'm thinking about. One, legitimately, it is a element that we have. So I don't know. I just it's hard to say. And with his story, and how did he become a physicist incredibly fast, and at such a young age, and in such a prominent position?
So what you're saying is he possibly could have just worked there as a janitor and stumbled upon something, and they went, "Hey, you know what? This might work."
Well, they could. I'm saying they could have actually pulled him in and said, I mean, he was probably a real vulnerable guy and very impressionable at that age, because he probably wasn't the coolest guy in school. So we got this job for you. It's unbelievable. So they bring him in. They have this all set up. They have rooms, they have a lab, they have lab equipment, and they show him on a need-to-know basis, because he wasn't there long. Wasn't there, in a real long time, but, he saw enough to bring back. And what made me think of this isn't even related to this. Well, it kind of is. And I go back to that runway that I saw on Google Maps, with the buildings, and that one building sitting there that has clamshell doors on the front that are round, Right. That tells me, do we want somebody from outer space to look down and think that we have some round object right at the end of a runway sitting there. You know, it just
Well-
it seems that thing seems well. And then here's the other thing, you guys, is the fact that it's just on the nuclear test site in the desert there, to the west of Groom Lake. It's right there, right below it. You know, a half a mile from it. And why would you build something so close to a nuclear test site? I mean, there's radiation there of some kind.
I would imagine so, and I would imagine you'd have to take precautions if you were working there, but it would also keep the public away, I would imagine.
Right, exactly. So I don't know.
But you had mentioned, you know, do we really want the aliens looking down and seeing something like this? Personally, I'm of the opinion that our government and possibly other governments are working with aliens right now, and I think that that's going to be part of the full disclosure once we finally do get it.
Yeah, I agree with you, but if we're working with aliens, I don't know if we're working with all of the aliens.
No.
Several different types out there.
Yeah, I certainly believe it's probably just the one race, and known as the Greys. I truly believe that.
I think that, when I'm thinking about this, I've created, like, for me, way more questions. I mean, I really want to, know about what I don't know. I want to know about Area 51, but I also want to know about every other facility there. And there's a bunch of them. I mean, there's stuff all over the place there. You look at Google Maps, and it's totally amazing. And
and not just here in Nevada.
Right.
Yeah.
California has, really secret air bases, and Utah, and I mean, there's a lot of incredible things going on, and I have a lot of questions, but I think that you get such a variety of answers. I'm going to post a YouTube video tonight on my Facebook page, but there's a really unique individual who I watched last night give a 90-minute lecture on Area 51 and working at Area 51, and I'd never heard of him before, and I can't even say his name right now. I can't remember it, but he's talking about elevators that in hangars that two Boeing 747s could sit side by side. They're so huge, and they drop down at least 500 feet, and things like that. And he jokes around, and he said he was in Area 51, taken to this elevator, and lowered it. And he's given a tour because he's working there. And he said his question was, "Where'd you guys put all the dirt?" And he's always making these jokes. It's sort of funny, but I'm gonna post it, and there are some guys out there but who have said they work there, but you don't see them very much anymore. I mean, maybe one or two videos of a couple of different guys, and that's about all you see.
Definitely post that. In fact, if you'll do me a favor, send that to me in a private message, and because I'd like to throw that up on our Black Lotus discussion group. I think people would enjoy that. Do
you ever remember seeing anybody else that had online or anywhere else that had worked at Area 51?
Yeah, actually, there was I went to the local hair salon to get my hair cut, and the guy that was there was an older guy. He's probably in his 60s. And I said, "Have you ever always cut hair?" He says, "No." He says, "I was in the Air Force for quite a while," and he said, "I worked up at the place." I went, "Nellis?" He goes, "No, the other place." And I went, "Oh, is that right? Really? That's interesting." And,
right on.
I said to him, I said, he told me, he says there's a lot he can't talk about, but I did have him confirm. We have Janet Airlines that flies right over our house, and for those of you who don't know, Janet Airlines is the only way that employees get in and out of Area 51. And anyway, and I had heard a rumor that the windows along the fuselage are all blacked out because, everybody's there on a need-to-know basis. So when they're landing, if there's something going on, the only person who can see what's happening out there is the pilot. And he says, "Oh, yeah, that's absolutely true." But yeah, he couldn't get into anything else. And I don't know if I believe him or not, but I don't not believe him.
Well, there's no reason for him to lie when he's just cutting your hair.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, just to give you a little bit of perspective, as you're telling this story, I'm thinking, and I actually do know somebody who says that they worked at Area 51, and he actually works at Home Depot here. And I've been at Home Depot a bunch of times, and he segues into I guess he had brain cancer, so he's a survivor and really nice kid. He must be about 30, and he segues into his survival of brain cancer through Area 51. So he tells everybody, and he's a talker, and he talks a lot. And the reason why that I wasn't remembering him is because he's, I guess there's a lot of people who probably have brought up that they've worked there, and we don't listen to him very closely because number one, it's an unbelievable story when somebody tells you that, because it's just unusual. But yeah, he said he was there, and he talks about the history of the place, and he knows a lot about it. And I was actually getting paint there one day, and I caught him on the computer there, and he was looking at Area 51 and different aircraft, and so who knows? I mean, there's got to be a lot of people that work there, and there's a gentleman that I'm going to have on next week who actually worked at Area 51, and I watched a video last night about him, and he said there were so many people that worked at Area 51 that didn't have highly classified jobs. And
Sure, because the place needs to be cleaned up. I mean, you need custodians too, right?
A lot of people, and I've seen pictures of people at the airport in Vegas getting on those planes. Lines of people. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's really interesting because they must do it in a place where you can't see that very well. Because I haven't seen too much of that, but what I have seen looks like there's a lot of employees, and there's got to be. It's a huge facility.
Yeah, I've been down to McCarran Airport where Janet Airlines is based, and you can't see it very well at all. There's a huge parking lot between that and the tarmac. But I mean, a lot of parking available. So I'm sure there's a ton of people that work there.
Right. We're about out of time. Anything you guys want to say before we go?
No, not really. But hey, thanks for having us on, man. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah,
it was great talking with you.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Damian. And next week, the gentleman I was talking about is T.D. Barnes. He's an author, and he's worked at Area 51 and a lot of experience in the aerospace business and contracting with the CIA, and he's all over the internet, and he likes to give a good interview. So he's going to be here next Wednesday night, and we'll talk to him. And thank you guys, and let's do this again. Let's not wait a month. Let's do it. Yeah. Do it soon. So
we need to have you on our show.
I would love to. Days. I would love to. So I'll let me know, and I'll clean the house.
Speaking of that, do us a favor and drop the link to our YouTube channel in your description there. It's
absolutely will. Yeah,
youtube.com/Black Lotus Productions. Pretty easy to get there.
And how often do you guys do material?
Usually it's just once a week, but sometimes we do kind of a shorter show sometime during the week.
How long does it take you to research that?
About a week.
Yeah.
So
what's the process?
Well, the process is there's so much information on the internet that a lot of it is crap. You know what I mean? And so we have to weed through that stuff and kind of decide on our own what's real and what's not. And so, so there is a lot of research that we put into these things. And like I said, we usually upload the shows on Sundays. And then from Monday through Saturday, we're researching stuff.
Yeah, we try to research pretty deep into it. And it seems like no matter what we try not to, we end up going down rabbit holes and going way into it deeper than we had anticipated.
Right. In fact, the Area 51 show that we did, it was just rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. Bob Lazar is just you're just scratching the surface with him,
Right. So when you approach somebody to be a guest, here's something that I found interesting. So I'll email somebody and ask them if they want to be on my podcast. The first thing they ask, is it audio or video? Because they don't want to be on video.
Video.
Yeah, they don't like the way they look, and it didn't really even occur to me that would even be a thing. But
yeah,
it's
one of the problems we have with guests. In fact, we had a problem with Shitan Noir, and we were going to have her on, and she's a guest speaker at conventions and all that stuff. Really kind of really cool person, but she didn't have a webcam.
Right.
And it's like, well, I can't do it without it. I mean, it's a video program. I mean, and I wouldn't want to have it with Ralph and I on the video, and then just her voice coming across. Kind of a combination podcast video cast. I really didn't want to do that. So yeah, that's really the only problem. We've had a lot of people approach us, and say, hey, I'm available if you'd like to have me on the show. And I've approached other people, and we've got great responses off of everybody. But
yeah, there's a lot of people with a lot of cool stories, and I think it would be fun to do that via video and have 10 people and just do a marathon of stories, because when people hear other stories, they just get totally pumped up about it, and they want to talk about it, and they love it.
And I think this community, the UFO community as well as the paranormal community, is kind of a tight-knit community. I can't even begin to tell you how many people we've met worldwide that are involved with this stuff in research.
And they know each other.
It's really an interesting network. I mean, that's how I got to know you.
I know. That's absolutely true. And I think it's funny because Facebook, brings all these people together, and so like you'll be thumbing through Facebook or whatever, and you come to the part that has suggested friends, and you see somebody interesting, you click on them, and you know how the algorithm works. I mean,
sure.
They'll pick out all these people that are friends of friends, and then people that have UFO interests or whatever, you're into, and it's just crazy how many people there are. I mean, you could literally, honestly, if you spent a day just going through these people and spend a second each on them, there's got to be millions. I mean, in this nation alone, and then of course in the UK and Australia, that's big. You see people from Africa who have Facebook pages, and they are like serious. I mean, they ask. Their questions are, like, are they after us? Are they coming to get us and things like that? I mean, they're serious. There's some serious fear there, and it's just really an interesting thing to see how this whole process works. And I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm happy to have you guys and know you guys. I'm going to come down to Las Vegas within the year, and I'd like to
look us up.
Yeah, I'd like to meet you guys, and I'd like to go out to the Groom Lake Road and do that trip, because that looks like a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll stay out of trouble. My guests again tonight, Damian and Ralph, Black Lotus Productions. You can check them out on YouTube, check them out on Facebook. Thanks, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you.
My Alien Life Podcast.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Elion. You can find all Elion's work online at Heart Dance Records.